interesting problem we have. See, this is Freddy's cage. And Freddy goes over into Chickie's cage and steals his food, but Chickie has just discovered little orange slices that Freddy enjoys. You got a whole can of these mandarin oranges. So when Freddy's up on his perch, doing what parrots do best, eat all day long and make a mess, and put half on the floor and half in his mouth, this guy's over here stealing mandarin oranges. Mandarin oranges! You guys make a great pair. The Brothers Chickadooley. Now, today I wanted to get an early start here, so I wanted to start framing out what's going to be the plug for the A26. And I'm trying to lay it out. I've built this in my mind several times, so I'm pretty much ready to go. What I really wanted to do, I wanted to lay out exactly what the fuselage sides would be, because I'm going to be leaving blocks on the whole perimeter of it, maybe a whole block in the nose. But I wanted to lay out, if nothing else today, lay out the sides, and lay out most of what Les brought over the other day, the curve to figure out the top curve of the body. He has a giant, I call it a ship's curve, but it's not really a ship's curve. We're going to try to lay those two parts out today, maybe get a couple formers in, so we can start to see what this is going to look like in real time. But first I want to go through the mail. We got some nice photos in the mail today. Now, our good friend Larry Scarinzi sent these photos. These are supposed to be memories of the 2003 Nats with the water and everything. Oh, not real excited about remembering that, but what he did send, and these are real nice. Sent some real nice pictures of the B-25. Apparently he had a nice camera, good camera, something I don't have. Got a nice picture with Mr. Rich launching the plane. A couple of real nice pictures too from what looks like the Billy Mitchell angle. Now, if we could only eliminate this plane here, we'd have a real nice picture. This one's real nice, except for one thing up in the corner here. There's a cone, but if we were going to crop that somehow. Now, I also got a nice letter from a card even, from our friend, and you may remember him from the last tape. The previous tape we talked about James Mills. Well, there's James and his son, and we were talking about some medical issues that both him and I have the same medical issues. We both have had hernias, so not that that's what you want to have when you're building models. You want to share these lovable things, but anyway, I have to get ready to have some hernia surgery over the winter, and he walked me through it and told me it's no big deal, don't worry, you'll lose a year of your life, but other than that it's no problem. Anyway, I want to frame out that fuse today, if I can, or as much as I can, and hopefully we can finish up one of Les's sets of cores, get those glassed today, and it looks like we might even have some reasonable weather if we want to put some more silver on that wing. Now, one of the things I do, I have what I think is going to be a pretty reasonable side view, but luckily I have this plastic model. This is the plastic model that Mike Costello brought over, so I can look at some of the contours, especially from the top. The top is what I really want to see, so I can try to mimic it as closely as possible. And this is going to be one of the areas where I want to mimic these curves. This is kind of important. But I need to get the width of the fuselage as realistic as possible. Also on the bottom, where this block is going to be carved, there's a flat gun sight area. I need to figure that out. Also, another thing that's going to be not difficult, but we have to take into account is quite a bit of the nacelle goes behind the wing on a scale plane. Now, we can't do that much because we're going to have flaps, but we want to have possibly a little bit more than we did with the B-25 to make it as scale as possible. You can get a little look at how that gun sight nose, that's going to be a unique shape that we have to carve into this piece. And I probably will wind up making this a dedicated piece that rather than try to mold this whole thing in one piece and then I'd have a reverse curve up here, I think it would be a lot easier if I just molded this in as a separate piece, but of course it has to be carved out of balsa and finished and whatever. Just came across this picture, somebody looking for a nice Strega paint job for their nose. Anyway, get busy, let's start cutting some wood. Now, for making up a plug, because we're not actually going to use this part, we can use up what amounts to be our, not the best wood we have, possibly the heaviest, or some with a little bow or bend in it. We certainly wouldn't want to use up the lightest pieces, and I see we've got some real nice stuff in here. But I can peel off what amounts to be. Here's one that's 36. These can certainly become parts for a mold. So these will become lots more than enough wood. I need 3 or 4 pieces. Again, I'm going to build it in a similar way to a fuselage, but without having to ever hollow anything out or do anything like that. So I'll start off with some of the relatively heavy wood we normally wouldn't use on a good aeroplane, a competition aeroplane. But that wood that's left over always can make a good plug for a mold. First thing, of course, is to take all the wood we're going to use for sides and get a straight edge on one edge. And because this is not our prime wood, it needs about 1/8 of an inch of trimming. So the first thing I'll do is go over by my cutting pad and get one edge. So we're working off one straight edge. Now by getting one edge nice and straight, and I'll mark it, that's going to be what hopefully will be the top fuselage line, thrust line, whatever you want to call it. There'll be no motor in here, so it really isn't the thrust line. Now it won't be any different. Making this plug will be relatively the same, because we're going to pretty much do the same thing for Les's Skyraider. All I do is just mark the edge so we know which edge is our true edge. Sight down it. And then true it up on our Les's. Just got a brand new piece of sandpaper on here not long ago. Seems like a little thing, and you wouldn't think it would be important because we're not going to use this part. It's just going to be a plug or a butt, whatever you want to define it as. But by starting off with nice straight lines, it'll make the ultimate mold a lot better. And we are going to have to make more than one part. We're going to have to make one of these fuselages for Mike Costello. And possibly for somebody else that might want to have an A26 somewhere down the road. Now, the next thing I have to factor in is the cut, because I want to have at least a 1-inch nose block here, maybe a little less than 1 inch or 3/4 block. I need to put a taper in this part. This part here can pretty much stay the same. That's not going to be critical. Maybe I'll take a little piece out of that corner. But then back here I have to figure out, at least for 1 inch of block, go up and get that angle figured out, so that I'll ultimately wind up with a fuse side that'll allow for all the blocks that will allow the curvature around the whole side of the fuselage. Now you can get some idea of how this fuselage side is going to lay out. This will be the ultimate bottom of the mold. And this is a parallel line. It's going to have to end here. And again, we're going to make a complex bottom shape on a mold. So this is going to be a relatively complex mold. But rather than trying to mold in this last little area, I'm just going to let this contour out on the final mold, so that when I go to use this, I'll just cut this piece off and make a little balsa block for the back, or I can make a balsa block and then mold it. I've allowed myself plenty of leeway for 1.5 inch block, and up here this will just have to be a larger block because of the canopy shape. This piece will be 1.5 inches, this piece will be 1 inch, 1 3/4, and of course an extra little block in there. And we don't care about the blocks right now, because we're going to use up all of the wood that we really normally would just give to George Venturini for his RC models. But looking at this, now we've got a good start on laying out our fuselage plug. And if we were building a wood fuselage, well, we would do it very similar to this. In fact, you could just look at the B25 tapes and see how we did that one. Now, the big advantage of having a mold instead of having to build a whole nother fuselage is I'll be able to make Mike Costello his part in about 1/10 of the time, and they should be very, very similar. And it was probably one of the things I really regret about building a B25, and at the time I built it, it was so experimental, and because we had no idea of how much we'd enjoy it actually, I had no idea at the time. Had I known this was going to be this much fun, well, just as an example, Jerry Rushke's already got the other parts of a B25. I could have molded him up a fuselage and it would save all that work. Anyway, too late to worry about that. We're going to get on with making this plug, but having, not only if it's a lighter weight, having a mold for it, there's so many other advantages, including the fact that it'll never get oil soaked. Or if I ever wanted to, I could build another wing and tail, or a tail, or a wing, or what, million other things. It just gives you a lot of options. The next step is just to make a mirror image of this part, true it all up, and we'll have both of our fuselage sides made. Even Les, I really like this, and I think Les really likes it too. And I'm really excited about the fact we're really going to be able to, from a mold, make those parts for, people that, you never know, maybe somebody else crazier than I am that wants to make one of these. But if I could only explain, if I could only put it in a pill, just how much fun it is to fly these bomber stunners, then it would all make sense. But that's what motivates me now, and what really captures my imagination is just having planes like this that are really, to me, unique and really actually start a whole new, for me anyway, a whole new chapter in my involvement in model aviation. I just think this is something I really enjoy. And this is why we're pursuing it with a vengeance. I spent a lot of time here getting these to be exactly equal, in exactly the same way I would make fuselage sides. Made sure all the angles are the same, all the edges are true. It may seem like a little overkill, but again, I'm hoping that by making this plug real accurate, really make it as nice as I can, I'll leave the door open to making more of these in the future, whether it's for myself, Mike Costello, or whomever. Anyway, we have a pretty good set now, and they should be exact mirror images. And now the next thing, now that we have fuselage sides, the next thing is going to be to figure out that top contour, so we can make the spine for this. And then if we do have time, we'll start to lay out some of the blocks, start to see what this is going to look like when it's all in one piece. Now this is the thing that Les is going to use for his Paladin Testarossa electric, how many planes we're going to build off of this template. Here's the issue that we need to deal with, though. We need to make the fuselage much wider. But we're just going to add a center section to this, and we can pretty much use some of this curve up around the nose. And again, we're doing the top view now. And the way I make that is to make one piece, get the curve in it, then transpose it so I have two pieces with the same exact curve, mirror image them, and then when I flip them, same as the B25, I'll have a spine. But in this case, it's not a permanent, because we're not going to use this. But I still have to get the curves on both sides to be the curve I want and be symmetrical. So when I join them, I have the equivalent of what Les has here. And I don't know whether I can use this exact curve, but this will be a good starting point. and I'll just widen it up. Okay, now from Wes's spine, we've stolen this dimension, which is where we need to have the horn. This thickness is critical. Deducted the amount for the fuselage side. Run that curve into where the fuselage on the plan is constant, is roughly from the back of the window to the front of the leading edge. It's a constant, it's straight, and then in the front it starts to taper in again. So now that we have half of that, I need to cut that out, make a mirror image of it, and then join them together. And when they're joined together, it's a lot easier to make two pieces that are equal and join them than to try to trace them on a piece of wood that may vary a little bit. Hey! Boy, is he making me crazy today. Okay, so now I have two fuselage sides and half of the spine. Now I need to duplicate the other piece of the spine, make a mirror image, glue them together on the center line. And it's already starting to shape up. Chicky, I wish you would shape up. Look at this. He just won't. Chicky. He just won't leave me alone today. Must be his mating urges or something. Chicky! I'm not kidding. You're going to go live with Ken Clapson. Pieces are cut out, but what I want to do is I pinned them both together with a bunch of pins. I want to make sure I have them completely symmetrical, and I mean I'm really going to take my time and get this, so these are mirror images, because what this does, it sets the curve of the body, and once that curve is in the mold, it's going to be very difficult if it's wrong or if it's crooked or some other problem. It's going to be difficult to correct it once we carve the part. It's a lot easier to make. This is like the foundation of a house, where it's real easy to get that first row of bricks in straight, and from that point on, if they're not straight, wow. In fact, somebody on our block, they just had a porch put in, a brick porch. And Karen and I were walking one night, and we looked at it, and I said, you know, the thing is crooked. I could tell by eye it was crooked. And I went back a couple of weeks later, and it was really crooked. What happened? He didn't get the first row of brick in, and each one just started fanning up. And I don't know if this guy got a free job or, you know, his brother did it or something. But boy, that was embarrassing. Okay, now what this will do, this will hopefully give us mirror images. I always use that word mirror images. Originally loved that word. We got a nice transition curve going here. And we want to make sure we don't, I trued these pieces of wood up. Now once we take the pins out of this, then we're going to join them and we're going to make sure that every step of the way, we'll tack it first, run a ruler down here and make sure we haven't built a banana, because once it's wrong, it's going to be really difficult. This part here is going to take a lot of time to get it straight, because it's going to be making a part that there's a couple $100 in molding material just to make the mold. And to make a crooked mold, well, what's the point? It has to be straight to begin with. These look pretty good. The other thing worth mentioning, this is nice straight wood, but it's heavy. It's relatively heavy. We were building a model. I think this would be over the limit where I'd want to use the wood, but it is nice straight wood. And it's all sea grain too. So we should get a relatively nice straight part. Now leave the pins out and then we'll glue this together. Now it just seems like early on here you always get the feeling, wow, I'm spending a lot of time straightening things out, truing them up, and you know, I'm not even going to use this part, or it doesn't matter if you're going to use it or not. Even if you're not going to use it, it's going to create a part that you're going to use over and over. So if it seems like I'm spending an inordinate amount of time on little things here, when most people would just say, well, just glue it together and sand it later. Well, now we want to see if these two are going to join up on a straight line. And if they don't, ha-ha, and they don't. One piece, now this is a good thing we noticed this, because one piece had a spring to it. So we're going to have to make one of these pieces over. I don't know which one it is. One of them is crooked. Even though I've trued it up, And see what I've done? I put a little orange dot on the side that was true. But now, what's happened is once I've cut the part, the wood has released its tension in the wood cells. So let's see which is the crooked part, and this is a critical part. This is the one that's crooked. Let's hope only one is crooked. No, the truth is they're both crooked. So what I'm going to do, I'm basically not going to use these parts. I'm going to go ahead and make two brand new parts. You see what's happened? And if I true these up, they'll be way too thin. So this is a case where a bad piece of wood could have, this whole mold could have been crooked had I not checked this. Always a good idea to check it. By the way, this ruler here is a very expensive ruler. This is a steel ruler that's very true. It's not a Home Depot ruler. So that's off by an eighth of an inch. Alright, well, all that tells us is it's a good thing we checked it now before we go on and make parts from this. This wood has really popped. So this really was a piece of wood that had a lot of tension built into it, and imagine if you were building a plane you were going to use these parts, you would just have started down the road toward Bananaville. Put these two bad pieces away, and I laid out another one, and believe me, if you catch things early like this, boy is this worth it. Just being able to catch a warped piece of wood or something before you have 100 hours sunk into the project. At least once a tape I embarrassed myself, and you can see I've cut up about 10 pieces of wood here. What I wound up doing, because all of this wood that I had is basically I'm trying to use up some lousy wood, rather than join two pieces together, because the wood was all springing. When you get it that thin, it'll always, spring is here to stay, get out. So what I did instead is I tried to find a good piece of wood. I hate to use up good wood on this. Put a center line on it and then traced out the curve with a little bit of massaging in the curve area, because I basically laid this right over the B25 to see if I was getting pretty much that curve. So now I do have a good spine, and I have about $50 worth of scrap wood I can put in a dumpster. And you can see just how nice it is to have the model already built, that you can go back and reference what the thickness is. Again, because we're trying to keep within that 10% rule, that all critical 10% rule. So I think we've pretty much got a realistic curve, at least if I look at the three views, I'm pretty close, except the nose is a different shape, the canopy will be in a little bit different area. But now it's just a question, I need to cut this off in the various parts and start framing up the fuselage. A lot of times you have to improvise. A lot of times you have to throw a lot of wood away. So we basically can dump about 5 pieces of good wood. But it was all wood. It looked good, and you never know when you cut wood if it's going to spring or not. So my suggestion is now we could use this for little parts, little pieces, little something, formers, whatever. But you sure wouldn't want to use this. We've uncovered one of the mysteries of life. You sure wouldn't want to have used this wood up, even though it looked like relatively straight wood. As soon as you cut it, off on an angle. In fact, if you looked at some of the pieces that were left over, just as in that one, that one's not a good example, but you can see how much that has sprung in the course of cutting out a half a part. So now it's just a question of figuring out how we want to frame this up. We can clean off the table and we'll frame this up. Now the next thing I want to do, I want to make another copy of this, because what I want to do is on the fuselage I want to have a spine on the top and on the bottom, both. And I want them to be exactly equal. So the first thing I want to do, this will be a lot of fun, get a center line on this and make another copy of it. And this whole thing with the wood, I'm really struggling trying to find wood that doesn't have a spring to it. But boy, if you ever want to be aware of something, now what I'll do with this is I'll work off a center line. The This is really the only way to reasonably do this. And what I'm trying to do, I'm working at a time of the day that Wes is going to need the table later today, so I wanted to get this to the point where it was in my hand and I didn't need the table if possible. Of course, if I don't, that's tough too. Now what I'll do is get some pins, pin this right to the part with the center line on center. These are the pins that come from Hobby Lobby. We use surgical pins. John Pontier was the first one introduced me to them. Boy, are they nice. And now with them, the idea of this is that the wood won't spring. And I might have gotten, you see what it is, I might have gotten 12, 15 pieces of wood in that batch that all came from the same block. And that's a branch that's been hanging for 100 years. And when you release the tension in it, you just let it go. It's always good to check, and double check, and triple check, and quadruple check, and whatever check. And balance your checking account. Alright, so now with this piece in place, this is going to be one of the things I want to get very accurate. Again, because we're going to have an upper spine and a lower spine, and they're not going to be exactly, they are going to be exactly the same. Let's hope. Get the phone. Okay, now we have this piece traced out. Now it's a question of cutting it with a brand new number 11 blade. And then being sure we have that magic word that we're always looking for, mirror images. Now let's just hope that when I cut this piece it doesn't go right off the charts. Both pieces cut. We have an upper spine, a lower spine. I want to get them on the center line. It looks like they're very accurate, but let's make them really accurate. Pin them together. And we'll even them out. It's funny how you always think the time you're doing something like this that it's not really that important and you could get away without doing it, and people notice that when the plane sits on the runway. And well, you know what? The bottom line is, if you build a model, you'll know it's there. And if I appearance point the plane, I'll know it's there. So that's two of us, and who knows? I guess there's just something that, in me anyway, that wants to make it as good as I physically possibly can. And I can't think of the amount of time that it takes to do it, because when you're building under like a time window, or you have to be done by a certain time, or you're in a rush, or you can't, let's just say like a day like today where I want to spend some time with Les. Well, yeah, if I worked on my own model all day, maybe I'd be done already, but it wouldn't be as much fun. Now with the two pieces stuck together, I'm going to go over to the sanding table and get these exactly accurate. And you can see they're pretty close, but not exact. I can see the line on one side. And this is just going to take a little bit of time, but all this extra little effort is always worth the work. And always when you want a mirror image thing, just pin them together. So this way it won't matter which is the upper one, which is the lower one, really. Now, the way to check that you've got this real accurate is when you're all done, is reverse the parts. They shouldn't change shape. It's like an airfoil. And the last thing is, without sticking the pins in my fingers, find any spot that's uneven. In fact, there's a spot right up here. It's not exactly the way it should be. I can also take this over to the sanding bench and do a little final sanding. Here's a spot that's out by just a little bit. Getting the foundation right, so important. So many people start a model and they want to just rush right through it and never pay attention to the little things early on. And later on, when they catch up with you, then it takes 10 times the amount of time to straighten them out. And having a piece of sandpaper on your building board, or this is sticky back paper with tape around the edge just for convenience. Okay, now that should be. We should really, in essence, have two pretty accurate parts here. And you can see looking down the center line, that hasn't popped at all. When I take the pins out, well, the center line's on the other side. We'll check that out. But that's a good start now to have the spine. And since this is getting cut at various stages, I don't want to have that these are unequal even by the slightest amount. I think we've realistically got these as close as we possibly can. And now I need to figure out all the break points. And now it won't matter, the reality is it won't matter whether I'm using the upper or the lower. Now, one of the things I could have done better had I thought about this a little sooner, what I could have done is made this piece out of light ply and ordered a 48-inch piece of light ply and made this, because doesn't matter what it weighs, then the spring would be almost nil. But anyway, I have two spines, I have two fuselage sides, now I'm ready to start building this plug. And I hope one of the things that you get from the video is it wouldn't matter if you were building a Cavalier or a Brodak Cardinal, an SV11 or whatever. Having a fuselage that's equally straight, built on a spine, this is just one of many good ways to do it. Now what I need to do, I need to measure up the fuselage side. This piece here, the first piece, off of the spine, get it cut 90 degrees even with this edge, and then I can start, and what I'll do is I'll just tape it all together with tape and pins until I see the alignment before I tack it together. Now, I need this piece of spine is going to be inside the fuselage right here. Now, one of the choices would be I can cut this right here. So what I need to know where 90 degrees is going to be on this. One of the things I probably could have done without realizing it is, and I guess we still have that choices. Instead of filling this with formers, I could have made a third spine that would go right down the whole fuselage. Let's see. Now, it's a thought. It's think tank stuff. You can think about it, but anyway, we're going to cut this into. Let's see. We only have to cut this, and this one only gets cut once. And now we have a front piece and a top piece. Well, what I want to do is just tack this in place. I don't want to make a permanent joint. And while it's drying, nice thing about using this system, everything winds up at 90 degrees. Well, before we go to the next tack, make sure we get it. And while the glue is setting up, nice if you have fingernails here. Oh, as he drops it. I would tack this side just as we go along, just check it. But these are just tacked together, there's nothing permanent here, so what happens is if we have to break it, move it, we're not breaking a permanent joint. Right now that is totally just tacked together. The next step is going to be we're going to check it for 90 degrees before we make a relatively permanent glue seam. I'm going to ensure that this stays 90 degrees for a more important reason. I'm going to make up formers with a 90-degree triangle that all will have, it's a little bit out in the front. Because I don't want to permanently glue it. I want to have the glue joint to be semi-permanent. This side is a little bit off. But now by making up the formers all 90 degrees, this is critical, is to have 90 degrees. So each one of these form a perfect 90-degree box. And then we can put the bottom spine on. The bottom spine will totally finish that whole, so that nothing is out of whack. Nothing is out of 90 degrees here. Actually, one side is real good, one side is out just a little bit, but I want it to be very, very accurate before I go any further. I just want to get a nice flat edge while it's in this position. The reason is I'm going to lay this upside down as I put the formers in, and then I'm going to check every former that's in here. Every corner should be 90 degrees, and that should reconfirm that we're not building the proverbial banana. And since the side area of a twin, remember the side area of a twin is a combination of the nacelle area, the rudder area, and the fuse area. We have tremendous, tremendous side area. So I don't want to have it crooked in any way. No, it would be the equivalent of having a giant crooked rudder. Now I'm going to start laying out the formers. I don't know how many I'm going to get before Les wants to start using the table, but again, you get some of these popped in. And every time I get one in, oh, that looks nice. Every time I get one in, it's going to get more and more rigid, more and more solid, and then I can constantly be checking all my angles at 90 degrees. Another reason too, if you made a parallelogram or had negative draft angles, it'd be more difficult to get it out of the mold once the part is molded. Boy, this really brings back a lot of memories of building the B-25, but in that case we were keeping the fuselage. In this case, this is just going to be a plug. Just as a quick example of how any of the formers would go in, I'm actually physically marked from the top, because that sets my bottom. Once I have that marked, I know all the angles are going to be 90 degrees. I'll make them all just a tad, an incline thicker than they have to be. And once I have these, then I'll just take the incline off until this is an exact fit, and this will maintain that every angle here is 90 degrees. Nice way to do this is you can see by the pad here that everything is 90 degrees, so you can kind of double check it as you go along. You're really not locked into any angle until you cut the piece. It sounds like Les Demet coming in. Hey, Bomber Man, what's up? Oh, he's got toys.
Get a cap and try that. You won't believe how good that is.
This is going to demonstrate his toys. I'm going to fill this up with formers, basically just repeating this every 2 or 3 inches. It's not real critical.
You do have a contour. Okay.
It's all done, yeah. Yeah, it worked out well. The wood was springy, but other than that, I had to make about 25 of them to get us ready.
Wow, look at that. That's a good piece of eighth on the sides there.
That's nice, yeah. But it's springy. Couldn't use it for anything that you're going to keep.
Fuse side.
Now, as soon as you cut it, banana. I got the all the scraps here. I'll show you.
Oh, all right.
Got sticks for mixing.
Yeah, these are come out of...
Did you go to Art Supply this morning?
No, I stopped at... who are the people? They sell the summer furniture, the lawn furniture, and then they sell Christmas trees, and it's craftsy. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I was down there the other night.
These I got from Tom Morris when we were out in at Brodax. And what they are weights that are just about right. They're not going to crush anything, but they'll sure hold it flat if you're building,
Yeah.
And I guess we got to wipe them off, huh?
And I guess Tom doesn't bother wiping them off before he sends them. Wouldn't be a bad idea to spray them with clear lacquer or something so the rust doesn't get on your wood.
Well, you know what? It'd even be better. Just take a strip of masking tape on each surface.
Because we're only looking for weight.
Yeah, right.
All right, so we have toys. I'll go make some coffee, and I'll get this off the building board.
In the meantime, this is for mixing small batches of epoxy.
Yeah, that's
One
good.
index card, a little tiny stick.
Okay, yeah, I saw you guys were talking about that the other day.
So I figured it really does a nice job.
Boy, that does. I'm telling you. Now, you already trimmed the sides. How'd that work out by the gearbox? Oh, man, are you lucky?
What?
Oh, it's beautiful. The fit.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the leading edge is going to carry more of the weight than the skins here, that's for sure.
Well, no, this will work out fine.
That's working great.
We got to get that.
So you block sanded all the trailing edge and everything with that big bar?
Yeah.
The big giant bar?
I mean, that needs just a couple of passes with the short.
Boy, that's going to be nice.
With the smooth one, and we're done there.
I'm telling you, you know your stuff, baby. This bar is worth its weight in gold now.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's got more. If you're going to do a foam wing, boy, consider that a good investment. That is really nice.
Well, when you consider windy, you can even straighten. If you have a square, right, and you got a length of wood that you want to put a square edge on, you hold this square against the edge and move the
Exactly.
when you're done.
Exactly. Yeah. You get a lot of use out of that.
Yeah. And the nice.
I'm assuming sanding balsa wood, even sanding wood, you'll never wear carbide out. Carbide doesn't wear out when you do steel. Look how nice that is. It maintains the 90. Well, that is definitely the way to go.
The thing here is, Wendy, you got to make sure that when you have this
that the core is in straight
cradle, that you don't have.
Yeah, of course. But that goes no matter what you're doing. You could even tape that in on the side if you were, worried about that moving. But I don't think it's moving. I think that's going to be perfect.
This contact cement trailing edge works out fine. I had some.
Now you're going to leave that square and then make the front. You're not going to do rounded edges? Okay.
Right.
All right. Either way, fine.
Anyway.
This is now the premier set of wings in the shop here.
Well, I don't know about
as soon as you get these glassed and done and...
Well, what I'm interested to see is we have to run a test and see, maybe make a panel about 36 square inches, put E-glass and epoxy on one, and carbon and E-glass.
Cut a piece of balsa wood in half and do weight of wood and then weight of product.
Right, exactly.
Okay, that sounds reasonable.
All right.
Yeah, that is definitely a nice way to work. I am very impressed with that block. Every time I use it, I'm more impressed. All right, so you're going to sand wood here. I'm going to go make some formas in the bomber.
All right.
And I guess that's looking like the work of the day.
The wings, except for tips.
Okay, you got to carve the leading edges in tomorrow.
Carve the leading edges in tomorrow.
And that'll be ready for your...
we're going to, tomorrow also...
The other little project I got done while he was working on here was we loaded this up with formas. This is ready to start gluing on blocks. Next time I get a chance to work on this, just glue. The formas don't have to be in any separate, any special way. The main thing is that you just don't distort that curve that we're building in. And that the template for the bottom is exactly the template for the top. This way you can tell if you've created a snake or a worm or a, well, I don't know what, or a chickadoodle. Anyway, that guy's ready for the blocks. Now, I didn't have an 1.5 inch block that was long enough or wide enough, so I laminated up and you can see what I did. The joints are going to disappear because this is going to all get finished and everything, but I'm starting to lay out the blocks. I don't know how many of them I'm going to get on tonight. It's really not important, but Les got his work done on the wing. He's going to work tomorrow while I'm at the big train show. And I'm just going to carve away on this tonight and see how much I can get the big chunks done so that it'll be in a rough area. And then I know I'll have the drawings out and I'll just be able to lay some of the curves in here of where this tapers back and where the canopy has the bubble. I remember when the B25 was like this. Boy, oh boy, what memory do you have when you're looking? You say, how many 100 hours ago was it that it was just sitting here like a square block? Now the only difference is the B25 had to be all hollowed out, and this I'm just making like I'm building a house. So it does take a little bit less time. With this piece, this is the nose piece where the canopy is. I laminated 4 pieces together. Again, this is our old scrap wood. This is not really great wood. But this just gives us a rough shape. And I don't need to get every little bit in here, but I would really like to get some of this carved in. Anything you can remove with a belt sander or by hand or with a saw, it's a lot less carbon. And this is one monumental carbon job. Believe me, to carve this fuselage plug, a lot of hours. A lot of hours. And what I've done, I've got this profile right off the drawing. I need to get this angle buttered up just right. And basically it allows us to use up a lot of scrap wood that certainly isn't our best wood ever. That's the primary block for the cockpit. Now this, I've got this shape just roughed out. It's a little oversized. Now what I can do is flip this over, trace this piece out. In fact, I need a little bit tighter joint there. Once I get this, where's my pen? Just get a nice tight fit here. The front I don't really care about. Oh, yes. Should do it upside down, maybe. I need to get a little bit tighter fit in this. See, I don't want to have this go off on an angle. I want all the lines to be coming straight. Then I can kind of keep track of the contours as I'm carving. After a lot of fitting, because I wanted to get this joint relatively nice. Again, I didn't get it exactly the way I wanted, but it's certainly close enough. In fact, I could move a little bit this way and capture a little bit more of the lines. That's why having things tacked on is so nice. Well, this is going to be the last thing we do tonight. Boy, we had a killer day. Now I can get this lined up. And that doesn't let that line up, so we'll go back to closer to the original setting. A lot of cutting and fitting. It looks real easy when you see it on the video. You say, oh boy, that's done. Well, not quite that quick. Okay, we're not going to get it exactly the way I wanted it, but that's certainly close. Let me get a couple pieces of tape. And life is full of compromises. Let's see, do we have it up here? I think that's going to do. Tape will hold it temporarily. I've got the side profile. Now what it's going to allow me to do is remove some of this material on the old jigsaw, just making that much less. And the less we can get on here, you're going to have to do it with the belt sander. Every little bit counts. Now I'm just going to shape this block in so it's squared off. And the only reason I'm doing that is just for my own satisfaction looking at it. What I did is I dressed this off so I would get a rough idea about how that contour is going to sit there eventually. I get the nose block on, and that is definitely going to be it tonight. By trimming some of that wood away, that's just that much more of the contour is already pre-done. I'm going to glue that on, go look at our drawing, make sure it fits. Well, I got as much rough done on this as I possibly can. Again, we're going to have to see how this starts carving up. I'm going to work in the other part of the shop for the time that Les is working on the wings. He's got quite a few wings to work on. We got to get some of these contours, got to dive in the back. But for the quiet, Chickie, jeez. We are just, well, I am just as happy as can be that it's framed up this quickly. Because from this part on, actually carving the blocks, there's going to probably be a whole week, maybe 2 weeks of work carving, sanding, finishing, fiberglassing. But once you get it started like this, it's like going on a trip. You get out of the driveway, you get out of New Jersey, and all of a sudden you're on a road trip. Well, now we're on a mole trip. We're on a Chickie trip. Look at him. I'm going to kill him. He's going to live with Ken Clapson. That's all there is to it. Ken, the birds, and being the ambitious guy he is, I am so impressed. Here we are, we're all dressed up, and we're all getting ready to go to Outback tonight with the Jackabones, the socialist butterflies of the East Coast. And now, who could want a better wife than this? She sits over there doing hundreds of emails while I sit and make videotapes. How bad is this?
Sure.
Actually, we just got back from the big train show today, and we're making up a copy of this tape for Ed Cotton.
All I know is sometime during the year 2005, I'm going to have my lawyer contact you and state what all of my residuals are.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, I'll tell you, you can have half of what I earn. You'll owe me a little bit of money, but that's okay. I can use it right now.
What's more?
All right, let's see. This one is getting ready to be done. And he's already got one done that looks real good, so.
The 3/16 worked out well.
3/16 worked out perfectly, huh? Terrific. And I asked Karen to kind of carve up, get a little, where's this bird going? Carve us up a little bit here. Well, she's decided not to carve it up. You're not going to carve for me? You're just going to do email?
Christmas shopping.
Christmas shopping. Notice she didn't say, I'm Christmas shopping for Wendy. She said, I'm Christmas shopping. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done before I started.
She stopped at the coal yard.
Yeah, stopped at the coal yard, got a sock full of coal. Hey, where's that one that's done? Over here?
Yeah, it's in the cradles over there.
This one he did. How nice is that?
That needs a little touch-up yet, but
That's really, this is his premium wing with the gear blocks. I don't know if you want to call it premium or not, but and as we're doing this, Elliot's upstairs sleeping. He needs a nap. He literally needs a nap.
he said he's suffering from jet lag.
I think we're all suffering from jet lag in a way. You may get both of these done before we go. Well, a family that builds together stays together. Wendy's marriage counseling service.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, Arnie and I had a great time at the show. I'm really excited about the possibility. Ed Cotton is going to be making us a building for our model railroad, and this video should give him a couple of good ideas. Now, Les got back today with the rest of our foam wings from Johnny Duncan. Again, we have 7 sets of wings altogether for this aeroplane to make various versions of this airplane, and we're working on different parts of it. And that, of course, I hope is going to be very interesting in the near future, since Les is really putting a push on, and we're really starting to see some progress. He's got gear blocks in and whatever. What I spent the better part of the day doing was trying to figure out how I wanted to do this. I want to make this for sure now a removable block, and now I'm going to have to find a block either big enough or laminate it, because I want to end the mold right here. And that gives me a lot of advantages. This can be a plug-in part. I also want to, and I'm going to try to emulate and simulate the B-25, have this piece of the block removable. That allows me to get in by the nose wheel. Now maybe I don't have to get in by the nose wheel here as much as I think I do. I just may need to leave a door, ultimately build this up, leave a door, but I want to have a removable nose wheel, of course, so I can change the angle of the gear. The bottom piece, this will be another piece here that'll ultimately get attached to the part when the wing comes out. So it's looking like I need to find a 1-inch block the whole length, and then when I'm done I can mold it in one piece and then cut off the amount I need as I need it. I also then would need to make a block wherever this joint is going to be. Is this to be a separate block, and that can be one piece. Now the choices I have, and I haven't really made a total commitment here, one of the choices are I can carve those blocks out of balsa, but if I make a mold, then my Costellos will be exactly similar to mine, give me some advantage. So I spent the better part of a day just discussing the possibilities of, how Les and I want to come up with doing this. But I think the next step on this is going to be, next time I get to work on this, the next step is going to be to lay out the nose block. See, what I've done is gone right around the perimeter of the fuselage. You're laying each block out, truing it up as I go. Then I'm going to have a square fuselage shape, and then what I'll try to do is in a dedicated amount of time sit and start roughing it out, look at the drawing, hold it over the drawing, rough it out. So that's the thinking of how I want to do it and how I want to engineer it. Well, here's the B-25. It's nice to know that it's already been done one way, and if I can improve on that way, well, gee, I'd really like to, but the other point is, if I can't improve on it, just doing it this way, we know it'll work. So again, we have that square one that we can always revert back to, but if we can push this a little bit harder, that'll be nice. And of course our wing drying up by the heating vent here day after day after day, the tail drying up, a lot of the little parts that I made, the elevators, haven't had some more of the foam wings, in fact, those are the extra A26 wings. Having this stuff all drying up while I'm working on this for the next couple of weeks, this is really going to be a big help, because every minute that this is drying, it's just going to make sanding that final coat of silver just a little bit easier. Anyway, I was going to work on this today, but unfortunately we have several other projects around the house. The holiday season's coming up, and I've been informed by the boss of our family, Miss Karen, that today is not a modeling day. Today is a work on the house day. So we'll come back to this tomorrow. Now I have a whole day to think about. Now, beautiful Rutherford has virtually no more leaves on the trees. What a disappointment. Anyway, Brian has a couple of days off work here, and he asked me to come up with him and it's pretty cold. I thought one of the things I could do the last time we were flying, I had made some notes and made some props with a little bit less pitch, with the idea in mind of using them all through the winter when the air was cold. And so I think we'll see if the air is going to hold up or if we're going to have any air at all. You never can tell here. Get a short flying session in. So we get up to Club Field and Brian's already got something out of control here. Look at this. What little surprise do we have in store for us? We had our old table sitting here. What am I supposed to be looking for here?
When I lift this up, he's probably going to pop his head out or run.
Okay.
He's still there.
Where is he?
Make a liar out of him. Right? See all this in here?
Yeah.
Borrowed through here. I was just through here and I closed it up on him nice because he was looking at me.
Yeah.
He must have left. He'll be back later though. I saw 2 of them in here.
Nice.
Yeah, but
maybe we can get him to judge today.
He's a healthy man. But this one had a tail. The other one I didn't have a tail.
I thought you had a rattlesnake or something big like that. Oh, pick it up. There he is.
You see?
No. It's just the leaves moving. What are we doing? It's a beautiful... Look at this. Forget it, Brian.
I'm living in there.
Brian, we need a life. Let's fly. Brian's up here with his plane. I got some props, some cold weather props to test. And it looks like, boy, can you imagine? Now the field changes here. Actually in the summer it's really terrible. Now it's not that terrible because the air tends to come through when there aren't any leaves. But you can see we are surrounded. If I do a panorama, we are actually in a cereal bowl and with a cereal. And but it's a whole lot better this time of year. So now that we've not been able to find the mice that Brian swears he's seen, anyway, it looked like a very unexpected thing. We did not expect to go flying today. But what happened, when Brian takes a day off, he calls me in the morning, and then I leave the shop open for Les, who can work on his wings. We're closing in on those 40 shipped wings. I expect within a week or two, we'll have wings in one piece. And I'll have the wing for my ship started. I got it already sheathed. What am I talking about? And then we need to put one, see the air how dead it is? He's going through his own weight. But this time of year, it's just good to get out, especially when it's definitely flyable like it is today. Just walk the loops, the heck with it. This is a really great running Super Tiger 60 Brian made from one of the ones that I had parts, and I had given him to George Aldrich. And Brian took it and pieced together from a bunch of engines, made a spare one for Mike. And these run just sweet as can be, just real nice. Now I need to check props. What I had the last time we were out here flying, and going at this temperature, it's probably over 40 degrees by now. We're talking about between 30 and 40 degrees. You can see Brian's got a jacket on. And he's not a wimp either, believe me. What a nice run. When I've flown this plane, this is really a good flying plane. It was surprisingly good for a plane built right from the kit. But anyway, I want to get my stuff out of the car here. Brian looks like he's ready to go. If we can get a gallon of fuel burn today between us, that'll be nice. If we can't, we'll drink a gallon of coffee, one way or another. And I am always comfortable flying in cold weather. A lot of people aren't. John DeTavio's up here a lot. Some of the other people in the club, Mike Kajeski, of course, has got a steady job now, so he's not up during the week. But Brian and I call this a hooky day, when he can get a day off work, and I basically fly in the morning and then work later that night. After Karen goes to bed, I'll go in and put 3-4 hours in and catch up, but it's a 15-year-old design, and I think it still performs pretty well, even with a Tiger 60. Anyway, we're going to try to get some flights here. Get the coats out, get the hot coffee going, and flying in cold weather. What a lot of fun. Now, I got one flight in on this. It's depitched probably right about the right amount. I still have a real nice clean motor run, but the plane isn't going a lot faster now because we had it originally pitched at the team trials where it was warm some of the time, the gnats. We were flying the B-25, so I didn't get a lot of extra prop work done. And so when we transitioned to this, I needed to dial it in for hot weather, or warm weather, not for 30 degrees anyway. So now we're back to where the pitch is good for this time of year. We got about 6 months of this coming up. The other thing, because the field is in pretty rough shape, there's big holes from the mud. Another good idea is we have the landing gear set for the team trials. I'm going to, in between flights, pull the gear off, move the gear forward just a little bit. I don't like to have it when it lands that the gear are constantly banging back. I want them to just settle in on the gear for a landing. A couple little things you can do to make a cold weather day more enjoyable. Usually one of the things, and it's a small thing, one of the things the plane on cold weather will start turning a lot tighter than you like. Well, you could do other things like, and we've already discussed them, shortening up the handle, adding nose weight. In my case, one of the things that I have a choice of doing is I have a steel tail wheel on here that's about a ½ an ounce, and a little adjustment like just taking off the tail wheel, or put on a plastic tail wheel. And what I do in my box, let's see if I still have it. Shows you what I know. We always have a lighter tail wheel somewhere in this box. Of course, we have more junk than we need in this box every time. But I could switch the tail wheels right here. Here it is, right here. Who said he lied? I always keep one of these real light. These weigh only 2 grams. I can keep this as a way of just getting a CG forward. Remember, in warm weather, CG back. Cold weather, CG forward. So, and we'll see how many experiments we can get done today. Sun is out, but it is cold. It is definitely not even a flannel shirt day. The tail wheel that we had on at the team trails to get the CG back. It's made out of, looks like steel or brass or something. It's very heavy. This weighs nothing. But anyway, even just experimenting today with getting the CG a little further forward, because we're going to be, it's worth it, because we're going to be flying for the next 6 months in really cold weather. And then when the warm weather comes, we'll probably transition to flying the new A26 or the B25. But in the meantime, I'd like to have the plane, even though there are no contests, I just use this as an exercise for trim. And as a way of testing it, just try it with either one of the tail wheels, put a wheel collar on there to decide what's going to work for the winter. And we know we have 6 months of this coming up, at least 6 months. What Brian did yesterday was our club swap meet, in between changing tail wheels here. And what's the story with this? This is a 60?
It's a 60. Russian, I guess.
Yeah, it looks like a double star, in fact. How much does it weigh? Did you weigh it?
It's less than a Tiger. I didn't weigh it.
Okay.
But that's what that was.
Does it fit where a Tiger does?
I matched the mounts up today.
Yeah.
Same width this way. I didn't match across.
Oh, okay.
I would imagine it's probably the same. The Tiger muffler fits on there, it looks like.
Yeah. Oh, we could make a muffler for that.
Real long.
How much would this cost?
Cost me $87. So.
87? That's a good price.
It's got about 5 or 6 flights on after breaking. He said they brought, it took a long time to break in.
You got a test plane? We can.
Well, the only thing I got is a plane.
That's our test plane right there.
I think it would fit. It's going to stick out, of course.
Yeah, but who cares about that? Actually, if you had a plane that was nose heavy, this would be good because you could move see with the long shaft, you could move the motor further back. You could even make 2 new blind mounting holes,
Well, if it runs good, I'll build a plane around, and then I'll build an extra set of holes to put a Tiger in case things go bad, because you'll never get parts,
It would be fun to have it. It'd be fun. I wish you had a real test plane, not a sled,
Yeah.
That's very cool. For $87, I don't know.
So I figured, you could throw, I throw more money away on other junk engines, so. Should be a quality piece anyway.
It looks real nice. It's light. Wow. There's no material on it.
Johnny D says they fly him down in Texas. A couple guys have said they run great.
And it's a loop scavenged engine.
Yeah.
I'll get John D to put it in his plane. His plane, he can butcher it up. He doesn't care. It's an old thing. Very cool. Something new to add to our adventurous day here. Brian picks up the plane and there's no tail wheel on. He didn't know I was changing tail wheels.
Stuck in the mud there.
I got to bend those gear forward. It's sitting up way too high. With the concrete, it wants to nose over. You hit one of these lumps, and you got a rudder repair on your hand. So let me bring those gear up while you're flying. Move them forward a little bit. Now I've moved the gear forward on this 3 different times and still not gotten them far enough forward. Because what happens as the plane is a little more nose heavy now, and of course you see we're flying without a tail wheel, just to see if we can push this to the limit. With the plane nose heavy and the gear far back, it's very difficult to get it to land without going, and I'm always afraid in this field it'll flip and break the rudder. So even this will be the 4th time it's been on its back. We'll bend the gear even further forward. And that's what's nice about having removable gear or gear you can replace. I remember the old days like building in Aries and you couldn't get the gear out and you couldn't even adjust them because then the wheel pants were crooked. What a handicap that was. Each time is just line up the 2 backs of the landing gear legs, get them parallel, and then what I'll do is move one forward, move the other one forward, get them both parallel. So I always have the old setting in case I go too far with the first maneuver. And what I do is just put it right in between these wood cracks and bend it. But getting them For these conditions, boy, with the field this rough we've had in the course of flying a day here, I was really getting nervous that this would flip over and be a problem. And breaking that rudder or breaking that little back removable piece, what a job that would be to fix. So it would definitely take some time away from the A26 too. You can see how the outer one is decidedly forward. Now with that one forward, I'll get this one to match up to the second one, and then I'll be done and ready for another test. Adjustable gear, removable gear, and the fact if we wanted to, we could change virtually everything about them. Really a big asset to have over the way planes were built many years ago, where everything was permanent. See how far forward the gear on now. I really am getting, this is about as far forward as they've ever been. But then don't forget, we don't maintain the field over the winter. They don't mow the grass. They don't take care of big pockets of mud like this. So but keep in mind, we are going to have our new field before the spring. They're already working on clearing some of the material away, and Rich Jacobone's done a great job of following up on that. That new field is coming up maybe sooner than we think. And we're having a good day, actually. I shouldn't say anything. Even though it's cold, we're out here, and any day you get flights is better than any day you don't get flights, that's for sure. Look at this on the way back. What? Something terrible must have happened here. Wow. Wow, look at this action. Wow, trailer trucks. Whoa. Oh my God, there's 2 trailer trucks involved in this. Look at this. Oh my God. Holy mackerel. What a horrible accident. Wow. When 2 trucks collide, that's the real deal. Wow. Anyway, we're going back to the shop, back to Chicky, back to the 826, see if Les is there. In fact, they have the road shut down. Look at that. This is a major artery in New Jersey, too. Route 3. They have the road shut down. Wow. Unbelievable. This morning, as I sit here having my coffee, and believe me, I love this stuff. I get a package from our good friend Bob Martens. Bob, of course, is the person who did the Spitfire plans and many other things. Worked at Boeing with Joe Adamusco for a while. Quite a good craftsman, I might add to that. Anyway, he sent me a video, and I don't have all the information here, but I know it's in Stunt News. It's Bob Reeves, and this must be his Oklahoma club, had made this video of a Magnum with a camera in it. Get off my back, Chicky. He made it's powered by a Stalker 60. Well, I guess if they have this technology, and I know they do because Fred Cronwet had that seaplane, and it was somebody else that did a video similar to that. I can't remember that they had well, they didn't do a whole stunt pattern anyway. But I'm looking forward to seeing this. But here's what's neat. You get up in the morning, come down to shop. How different is this? Usually it's me sending out videos. Today it's receiving one. You know what? Receiving videos is cool. It's always something new. So now, these come from the Tulsa Glue Daubers. I'm going to put this on the Airborne video #1. And we'll do a little review, a couple minutes of this. I'll try to pick out a little segment that looks like it's fun. But keep in mind, here's the point. A lot of people make video, and need not make the list up. It's pretty long now. Because I believe I was the first one. Maybe I wasn't. We don't know. That goes back to '87. I have a personal interest in seeing this evolve and grow. Now, I've never done anything with a camera in it, but I sure would like to if somebody has the equipment and they can somehow shoehorn it into one of my... Imagine a B-25 if you could see the props turning or something. Not sure that's coming because that's not my area of expertise, but But people like this, that like Mr. Reeves, Bob Reeves is his name, that pioneer new things that make the sport more enjoyable, or in several people's cases, they document the world of control line stunt. I just think that's fabulous, and I would encourage everybody or anybody that has a video camera, shoot as much video as you can. The simple reason, a lot of the people at the field, like this bird maybe, we're all getting old, we're all getting frail and fragile, and maybe that the next time you go to the field, these people won't be either able to fly or some of them will have passed on. And I think having the video of them just is a special thing. I don't know how else to say it. Anyway, I'm going to check the video out. I'll put the label up on, and we'll put a little excerpt on it. And while it's playing, I can be working on some of the other shop projects. Bob's letter and airborne video. And I certainly would hope that in the future, or somewhere in our future, our video library would grow. I know Bruce Hunt has made some super videos. Bob Hunt's made some, of course. Al Raby, and maybe I'm leaving somebody out here. Phil Spillman, I think, had one. But every one of them adds something to the sport that if they didn't document it, or they didn't show different things of how it's done, or in our case, we like to do the Nats and the Worlds, we're going to do the World Championships, just having that years from now. And we're all old, but one thing I guarantee you, we're all going to get older. And as you get older, these become precious little keepsakes. Anything you can record, it's always valuable. It'll always increase in value as less and less it is people participate in our event. Anyway, thanks a lot, and we'll get a little review of this up there. Now this is what it looks like. I'm not going to put a lot of this video on because it's really pretty cool. This is what it looks like from the wing of, look at this pulling out. Fabulous cutting edge stuff. Buy a video, that's all I can say. It's great. And the little glitches that are in the footage, I wouldn't even, here's a square maneuver, look at this. Is this cool? That is definitely cool. If I could get that in my B-25, to die for. Anyway, special thanks from Bob Martens, and hey, we will treasure this and be showing this to plenty of people. Plenty of people will come to the, look at this, an outside square, that come down to the shop. Imagine seeing this. I just think the B-25 with two props, if you could get this camera up in a turret, wow. But this is cool. And even more sophisticated stuff is coming as the years go by. Fabulous, and thanks a lot. Appreciate it a whole lot. I'll be sending you some of my videos. Great video. Check it out. Now, the next thing I need to do, again, I'm trying to use up blocks like this. Let's see if we can get a 1-inch block, and then the last thing I'll do is I'll put on the nose section. If I can laminate these up. See, when you have a fuselage this wide and you don't have any 4-inch wood, you've got to put that joint somewhere. So I'm being careful to try to maximize it, since we're not going to care about the joints. The joints ultimately are going to get sanded and fiberglassed away. But I'd really like, even though this is not the greatest wood in the world, I'd like not to waste any of it. See, that's what's great about growing up poor. You never waste, you don't even waste a cup of coffee. Alright, we got to go through our stock and find some blocks, cover these two sections with blocks, make a nose block, and we'll be ready to start carving away. One thing, when joining blocks, and you want to get a nice seam, even if, let's assume you were going to join two scrap blocks to make a block that you were going to use the block. Well, when you're making a mold, if you can get rid of one extra joint line, that's nice, but in this case, both of these blocks are not straight. So having that piece of sandpaper glued to the table, this allows us to get a little bit nicer joint. And what I'm suggesting everybody do, in this case, you find a bow in it. Looks like this one's pretty straight, but we'll try to get a decent shape in it anyway. Now, there's a couple of good tricks here. Don't sand, don't blow all the dust off. Just shake it like that. Leave a little bit of dust. Because when we join these together, and I'll show you my little system for joining these, The thing that's nice is the dust that stays in there will help kick the CA without making that, what should we call it, popcorn or whatever. Getting these relatively smooth, then we can clamp them together or tape them together, and we have a real good shot at getting a nice joint. Now what'll help here, even if you were doing a joint, you were going to use this block, you want to get the best possible joint. And I found this way to work. Leave a little bit of that dust in there. That dust helps fill a gap. It's even handier if you happen to have a friend who's an octopus and he can hold this together for you. But in our case, we only have an octopus with 2 wings. Now in this case, the joint is not going to be in the center, but we don't care. So we've managed to use up something that isn't really a great piece of wood to begin with, and in this case, we'll get a plug out of it anyway. And hopefully when we're done, we'll still have the plug, but that's not always the case. Now, as I send the CA down in there, what's going to tend to happen is that dust is going to kick it off. And I'm hoping by tonight I can get all the blocks in place and start to see what kind of carving job we're going to be looking at. Actually, one of the things I really do enjoy about the world of modeling, let me get our paper towel, but whatever sits out on top, wipe it. Good, dust is all over the place here. A lot of people don't enjoy carving, I do. So that the days I'll be sitting and carving this, stuff's kicking off and giving me a nice headache. The days I'm actually going to be doing all this carving, there's going to be a lot of hours, and I want to be able to enjoy every one of them. I don't want to be doing it like I'm working in a sweatshop or something. I want to be able to just lay this all out. Of course, I'm going to be working from the drawing back to the blocks, from the drawing back to the blocks. Good news is I don't have to hollow anything out. But this block I'm only going to be able to tack it on, because this is going to come off to make a separate mold. Now, I always feel if you're not going to be able to use, in other words, we're not going to be able to use a piece that thick, try to get the seam as close to the middle as possible. In this case, if we could get 2 parts out of it, we're not. We are able to use what would have amounted to be 2 blocks that I doubt if we'd want to make real top blocks out of. Alright, so now it's very easy to cut these parts out, take them over to the saber saw, cut them out, get 90-degree joints front and back, get them up on a belt sander. When you look at the video, it probably looks like this takes 5-10 minutes to do. It doesn't. This is time-consuming stuff, because I really want to have the joints as close as possible, just so I don't have a lot of filling and stuff to do. Once this is cut, what I want to do is get a seam that's going to be, in essence, a take-apart seam. I don't want to have a permanent joint. The way to do that, whenever you're going to take a block and you're going to want to remove it, in the case, let's say you want to hollow it, the trick I've learned that seems to work well is just put a little bit of sanding dust on there. Whatever stays on there is fine. It's not a real ultra critical thing, but we want to get this centered. And now what I want to do, I want to make sure both sides are on equally, is just 1 drop of CA, maybe every 3 inches. Make sure that's centered. 1 drop here. I don't want to have it that I have to chop and cut it to get it off. I'd like to be able to just slide a brand new blade in there and get it off when I'm done. Again, the sanding dust is the trick that allows that to kick off. In fact, rather than putting kicker on, I just want to let it sit. I don't want to have a sloppy joint there, but that should be enough to hold it in place. Once I have that cut off, then that'll be a separate mold. That piece will be we're actually going to wind up with several additional molds here when we're done, but right now, we can just get them all the blocks carved. Now, the last one we got to lay out We got to get a nice joint back here and get a block. This block is going to have a very convoluted shape, so I'm going to try to get this, if I possibly can, with a 1 inch, maybe a little more than an inch here. Got to look at the drawing. Ran into a little thing I didn't expect. This block needs to be a 1/2 inch, and I need to come up with a way to get that shape back here. So what I decided to do is just take the residual part that's left from this, or if I can find a 1 inch, maybe I'll do it with a 1 inch block. I need to capture that piece that's going to come down there. Because the reason for not using an 1.5 inch block, I would basically be losing everything in the back. So this was just a way of trying to use up wood that I already had, and it's already been floating around here. So I'm looking at this from several different ways. I was going to make one separate block, but then I'd have 3 joints. Well, this is kind of like the lesser of all the evils here, having it this way. See, when I had laid out the cut lines, I had assumed I'd just use an 1.5 inch block. And when I looked, first off, I don't have any 1.5 inch blocks that are worth carving up here. They're all too good, is what I'm saying. They're all good wood. But I can just put in a little piece. I guess I'll just put a piece of 1 inch in there, and we're going to have to live with the fact there's an extra seam there. And then the last thing is going to be just coming up with a nose block. And I should have all the blocks on. And boy, if I can get that done today, get finished with that, then I can come over to this table and be working off of this table, get rid of all these wings, in fact, and then start cutting in the contours, and I'll have that black plastic model to look at. I'll have the books, and I'll have the plan to work at while I start doing the carving. Now this worked out better than I thought it would, because I was able to put half of the little shape in there with the belt sander. But I still need to true up the sides, and that's the next step. And again, the last thing will be this gigantic nose block that I'm guessing we're just going to make I haven't decided definitely yet, but probably an extra mold, a cone that could go on there. Because I wanted this mold to be as easy to make as possible. This is a relatively large mold. I don't want to make it so complex that it's difficult for me to actually make copies of it. And all these tack joints look like they're going to be fine once I get that sanded down, but I still need to be able to get that whole piece off if I can, either in 1 or 2 pieces. It's always easy if I can get some of this material. In other words, I'm trying to get the most amount of material off with a knife that's possible, because I basically don't want to breathe the sanding dust. Then my second resort is to try to do it with that carbide block. And if it was a little bit nicer outside today, and it isn't, you just go outside and do this, and just let the chips blow in with the leaves. Let the town pick them up. But getting these edges is just going to make the carving operation. I want to start with something that's as close as possible to the outline shape. This worked out pretty well. And we're basically in the invent-it-as-we-go-along part of the job here. We'll find out how this is going to come about. And just thinking about this as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about the days of hollowing out all the parts on that B-25. If you could remember how many hours, oh man. I think it's actually going to be a shorter amount of total hours to make the mold. Now I got this block roughed out, but I need to get the angles right on it. Basically the nose block, and then I'm going to try to trace, well, I can't trace it, I'll glue it up square now, but when I'm done with this, I'll put a piece of 64 plywood on this on both sides so that that joint doesn't tend to warp or expand or whatever. Keep it stable. So this is the last of the blocks. Once this is in place, maybe not today, but sooner or later, we're going to definitely get some carbon done on this. And it'll be fun years from now to look at the video and when that nose is off with all the tape working, the rivets are all carved in, and know we started with a balsa wood block. So in the middle of carving up our part, we didn't even put our nose block on yet. Rich comes in. Where'd you buy this at the show Sunday?
Les did.
Les bought it.
Les bought it.
Okay, so Les bought it as a test plane for the
From
the 40s.
From Hampshire.
Okay. That doesn't look too bad. Well, we're gonna find out when Les isn't coming over today. He's raking leaves. Hey, don't put your fingernails in that part, baby. Uh-oh, Chickie's mad at you.
It's nice.
Been bit by any birds lately?
No. As long as I stay away from Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger wants you to come over and see him today.
No.
I gotta glue that block up yet.
It's nice. Windy.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna use that to make the mold, of course. You know the whole deal.
You're going to use this to
A lot of carving. I'm gonna come down to your house and carve it so I don't make a big mess in my cellar.
Oh, I know.
When you start carving,
I know.
it's everywhere. Winds up in a bird's cage.
So
And
you're going to carve this, and then you're going to mold around it.
yeah, we're gonna make
Beautiful.
3 or 4 molds. I haven't decided yet, but
Beautiful.
and the wings in silver already.
Yeah.
And look at all Les's wings over there. Les is going.
drawings.
Me, I did them.
This is very good.
Of course it is. I did it.
You.
You want a Stuka drawing? Money talks. Buy a pizza.
Yeah.
Where's your Stuka drawings? Elliot's got them?
Nobody has drawings.
You just do it by...
I just make modifications as I go.
Oh, man. Why don't you get a Stuka drawing made? I'll make a drawing for you.
It's a cardinal plan that I have it all marked up.
But all you do is make the scale
Stukas.
thing, go down to the print shop and have them scale up the scale plane and then put you know. Yeah, that's how Les gave me the parts for this drawing.
Oh, I didn't think about going to the print shop.
But whenever you forget, you don't know what to do, call Wendy. He doesn't know either.
You're right.
No, that's the way we did this. This is actually it's scale by about 1/4 of an inch, 3/8
Oh,
of an
what I
inch.
did was I used the cardinal drawings,
Right.
and I just
And
marked
you
it up.
just went
I
yeah.
marked it all up.
Right.
So now this drawing that I have, that's originally was a cardinal, I built 2 Stragas out of it.
And 2 Stukas
and 2 Stukas.
and 6 bombers, and I don't trust this guy. Anyway, that's the last step tonight. I'm going to put the block on before Karen gets home, and that's it. And tomorrow, the next day, we'll start carving it up. Ooh, I can't wait. I'm itching, believe me. Now I got the nose block. Basically, with the belt sander, got a lot of these contours from the side and from the point where I wanted them. Then what I did is I relatively carefully measured over and put a piece of masking tape going right down the center so that the tan masking tape will be my center line for the part. Then I took a piece of 1/4 inch blue tape and went on each side so I have this line, this imaginary line that I can carve up to, but I won't carve that final profile until I'm going to lay in the last little bit on this. Now, the reason is because the A26 has a relatively, from the canopy to the back to the rudder, a relatively unusual contour in the fact that it goes up, curves, like the bus does. It isn't a half circle. It's a half moon in some of the nose sections. But some of the views you can see, we have that black plastic model that I've looked at and felt the contours. Those contours, if I don't get the contours right, it's not going to look as scale as it possibly could. Also, I want to have this nose, I don't know how we should say it, the nose section. There's a flat glass area up there that I'm going to try to make a little masking template for eventually, just to get that in place. In other words, this is what's nice about having the book. I can look here, for instance, is the shape of that. You can see the shape from several different angles here of how that looks. And then what I need to do is put that piece of tape right in place now, so I don't carve a point and then have to flatten it out and then I lose my contour. So again, from this point on, we're looking at, you know, a lot of hours to get this to be a plug, because it's going to need a finish on it. It's going to need to be fiberglass. It's going to need to have parting lines. So by investing this time in this, of course the objective is that then when we make them, the next guy that wants to make an A26, he's going to have the easiest plane in the world to build. You order the mold. What I'm trying to do is cut a piece of tape, simulate this shape. Needless to say, I'm cutting 25 pieces of tape. It's very thin at the bottom. That's the part I don't have right. This is the kind of stuff where you go back and forth making patterns. I know I'm going to wind up with 20 patterns here. But I've been making patterns of everything for the, in fact, that's not pointy enough at the top now. I just get it rough and then I'll make a real pattern. Of course, I'll make the pattern where I fold the page and get it exact. So what I do is make it in, I'm getting a rough proportion now, hopefully getting a rough proportion. A little pointier at the top, maybe just a tad pointier, and then we'll do a fold job and see how it looks. And now what I do is just roughly estimate this. I know this needs to be just a little rounder here, but it's the proportion, and we're just working as closely as possible from this. Now when I take it apart, because I've done it on folded paper, I should in essence have the shape I'm looking for, or close to it, where I wind up having to modify it. In this case, it looks like what I need to modify it is just round it off the top a little bit. And now, once I have the shape that I'm really looking for, now I can put this right onto the block of wood and just use this as my carving template. Or an easier way is I'll make this same piece out of tape. I'll get a piece of wide tape and just make the piece. The correct terminology for this is glass bombardier nose. So at least I can start using that to figure out roughly where this dimension would be, and then this piece here, of course, would be on the bottom, that the gunner would just, the bombardier would sight through a flat piece of glass, the bomb sight. Now, to really make this simple, I just put a bunch of tape together, trace out my symmetrical pattern, onto what amounts to be a solid piece of tape. Again, we don't want to put any curve in that part of it, or that could be something that we don't want to do. We don't want to have a curve in there. I like to have it as straight as possible, because it's supposed to be the bombardier's flat glass, and using the correct terminology, bombardier flat glass. I want to be careful to get this in as close a position as I can, because this will be one of the features of the plane that I really want to be as accurate as possible. Now all we have to do is install it. Now to get this right, you need to see just how far up or down this is going to go. Like two great rivers, we will flow side by side throughout. Lower. Actually, lower. in the picture.
But a time will come when we'll have to part from our journey to
That looks pretty close. Now all this is a carving reference. It just gives us something rough that we can use for a carving reference.
To look and see, have to estimate when that's carved, if that's going to be where the bombardier's glass wants to be.
So from this point on, what we're going to do, this is all we're going to do tonight. We're going to basically look at trying to spend a little bit of time each day with the rough carving and the final shaping, and for instance in the back that needs to get tapered down quite a bit. But this is going to be something that takes a lot of hours, very time consuming, but I think just the fact that when we're done it'll be as good as we can possibly make it will make it well worth our while. And of course we'll have to see what Russ feels like doing tomorrow too. He's got wings to the, you almost can't put another wing and you're at the ceiling. Anyway, a good day. Well, before I went to bed, I just had a little bit of energy, a little bit of ambition, so I started making the rough carving on this. And you can see pretty much how much I got done. I spent this is about an hour's worth of work. And there's going to be a lot of hours in this, so that was just a rough carving, try to get some of the rough shapes and proportions in place. And if you want to sail on balsa dust, tonight would be a good night to order up some balsa dust. Anyway, day one of the carving episode done, and tomorrow I'll have a fresh cup of coffee and maybe start finishing up. I got to do a taper in the back, but a job this big you really can't do all in 1 or 2 sittings. You got to do a couple hours here, a couple hours there. Just spread it out over a few days and it will go a lot quicker. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow. Today what I did, I just tacked this together with some CA because I want to get the curvature of the nose. I want to get that little window area. I want to try to simulate some of these shapes as I carve, since I'm looking at a couple more days of carving. Now it'll even be more handy to have it in this dimension that I can look right down and I can see exactly how the windows shape up when I'm actually doing the carving. And in this case, the most important thing, since I've only got half of it done, to see how the nose shape is going to look from the top. From the side, I can pretty much lay out the side. I can get the window areas and the curvatures from the top. This window area in the back, which I just estimated with 2 little dots there. But that's going to be a big help in the overall carving. That's going to be an amazing help. I'm real glad that Mike had brought this over. And again, if we do an assembly with the wing and tail, I may eventually do that. But right now, this is giving me the information that I need to make this body. It's making it an awful lot easier in the long run, just because I can see things in 3 dimensions instead of in pictures. For instance, I can see that up here, this is a little too pointy if I look at it from the top, so when I do the finalized version of this, I'll blunt that out a little bit, and we'll try to we'll make it as close as we can. Well, I just wanted to mention something, and I mean, this may be very insignificant to some people, but to me and to Karen, it's very significant. One of the things, I always laugh about what some of the funny things model aviation adds to your life in general. Well, one of the things, you'll just look here, and of course we know accidents happen. That was the accident we saw the other day. We saw people were killed, people were maimed, I don't know how many, 12 vehicle pileup. But I just thought I'd mention one thing that relates to this, and it's really serious. It's something I never underestimate, is I almost always have a plane in the back of my Windstar. And when I have a plane in the back of the Windstar, I guess it's selfish of me, but I drive just a little more cautious, a little slower. Not because I'm afraid of having an accident. I'm afraid of having somebody rear-end me and wipe out the B-25 or Miss Ashley or something. So I often wonder if, and I would never, never consider like just going on a road racing course or something with a plane in the back. So having a plane in the car, maybe it does slow you down a little, maybe it makes you not run a light. I don't know. But in my case, I've had a pretty good run so far of when planes are in the car, I've never had a scratch, so I don't know what that's worth. It's something to think about. Now, we're almost at the end of the tape, but before we go, I wanted to do a little more carving. Again, I'm trying to do it in segments. Having this little model, I wish I would have had this when I had the B-25. I can look at this, and I was thinking about this last night while I was just watching TV. I could almost have taken this and traced it out, then enlarged it, and gotten a perfect, too late now. But that's one of the thoughts. If you're building a semi-scale model, the more I think about this, the better of an idea it looks like it is. If you were building a Mustang or a Thunderbolt, having this in your hand would just be so handy. If no other reason, it shows every rivet and ink line and the detailing in the windows. A lot of nice stuff. So we're going to be using this over and over again, but I'm going to spend the better part of today trying to get this from the top view, because I need to match this side. See, what I've done is the first day of carving, I roughed that out. Now I need to match this rough carving, the bottom two, just roughly by having my hand go across it. And then I can take the tape off and try to blend this in. This is just a giant job. You can't boil it down, and it takes 3 minutes to do it, no matter how you do it. But that way has always worked for me, and having a tape in the center and being able to use my hand more than anything else. So important to get this at least half symmetrical right now before we start with the sanding blocks and the planes and everything else. Now, one thing I haven't done yet is I haven't made that transition from where this is going to blend down, because I didn't get the side view. So what I thought I'd do is I'll just carve the whole top, and then as the last thing, put in the spot where the window goes, that I guess I'd call it a window for lack of a better word. But I thought I'd put a couple of things that I like to do. The biggest problem with carving that I've ever seen when people are learning how to carve is they try to take too much off at one time. And if you're happy with, first tip one, get a brand new blade, and every day put a new blade in. A couple of dollars worth of blades save you hours and hours and hours of aggravation. And being able to look at it from several different angles now, if you're doing a traditional stunner, you can improvise, but when you're doing a semi-scale plane, you'd like to simulate that shape as closely as possible. Then there's going to be a point in time when we get this roughed out. There's going to be a time when we can use a plane to get a lot of the straight lines, bring the straight lines back in. But what happens if you're using a plane to do these big cuts? It'll take forever. Now, it's real nice that this is solid, because a lot of times if you're dealing with something that has no bottom on it or there's no way to grab it efficiently. That's the problem. This is actually pretty convenient. And this is really not soft, punky, nice wood. So you really do need a brand new blade. But once you get the rough shape in, the second step is to go to the plane, and then the third step is to sanding blocks. You see what's happening? The knife is digging in here because this is really hard wood. But all of this is going to get removed anyway. And I was hoping we'd have a nice day to go outside and do the sanding, but it's not really that nice out there. It's really nice if it's a relatively warm, breezy day. That's what you get to do. is the dust just blows away. Where down here, you got to run that vacuum bench, and you get a headache after an hour doing that. You know, once you have the most rough shape, and I just wanted to do one little part here. Let me get the plane. Once you have that just in semi-rough condition, and again, it's not real close, we know we got to take a lot more off. But now that we have the biggest part off, hold the blade on a 45-degree angle and take small cuts. And you'll see how quickly that'll rough right in, go right up to the tape. Of course, you could do the whole thing with the plane, but then it would just take a little bit longer because you're just taking much smaller cuts with the plane, but they're flatter, and it saves you an awful... The idea here is not to have to do a lot of sanding. It doesn't matter how much carving you do, but to minimize the sanding, because in our situation with Karen, we're trying to keep the house relatively dust-free if possible. As I said, we're near the end of the tape. I was hoping to get some or most of the carving of this on the tape. But the trick is just to take small cuts. You can see this side we haven't even started yet. But then from this side, using your hand, try to get it symmetrical. That's the easiest way I know of to get this done in a relatively reasonable amount of time anyway. We have made some progress, and on the next tape, or the next time we get to work on this, we're going to work on the other side, making it symmetrical if possible, or as symmetrical as possible. We have a couple other really nice projects while we're letting the last coat, or hopefully the last coat of silver dry out. We're going to try to be making some kind of universal motor mount for this plane. This is Tom Hampshire's old plane. And, well, part of the idea of it is that Les can use it for a test plane. He has an incredible motor collection, and it'll just be fun testing motors in it. And of course, the good news is, and I hope this doesn't bypass anybody, because we've had bad news and good news. The good news is they're in the second day of working on our new flying field. The bulldozers were there, and they were, like Rich Jacobone had told me, they were working on it, and it looks like that's going to be a great place to fly the bomber come springtime. That's really making me excited. Not only that bomber, but this bomber if it's done in the springtime. But the other part of this is, and the thing we're really looking forward to, the 40 ships, the wings are ready for glass. 2 of them are ready for glass. We have the electric wing ready for joining. I'm going to have to start making up some belt cranks. And we're looking forward to maybe this week meeting with Sergio and getting some more information on the electric. He's been looking for batteries for us and for different situations that might be usable in control line stunt. So many things happening. And with that new flying field, we're going to be even looking at better times than we had this year. And this year was possibly the best it ever was. So as always, I hope you've enjoyed the tape. I hope you'll share it. And I hope hey, we have another side benefit is we're coming up on another train show, the Dover train show, which is not a real big one, but get to meet with Arnie again, get to do some work on the layout in between, working on these modeling projects. I just wonder what people would do with their life if there were no modeling. But anyway, we will see you on the next tape. And we'll finish out the last minute or two of tape with some running of the trains. Well, I just never get tired of running the trains. It is really a lot of fun having these trains to deal with every night. And we got to get our carving knives all sharpened up and hopefully in the next couple of days finish the carving on that fuselage plug and get the mold started. So we'll see you on the next tape.